Now you heard Richie Flynn there talking about the loud bang at Ferrybank. If you've any ideas what it was, text us in please, 083 333 975. Text or WhatsApp, or you can call all three on 051 846 123. We've a lot coming up in the second half of the show. In a while we're going to be talking to Shane O'Sullivan about inspiring excellence, and Shane has been giving talks about how, I suppose, people can get the most out of life, and some very, very good pointers he has regarding that. We're also going to be hearing about this man, as I said, that's been travelling from Norway on a boat with no engine to Dungarvan. He's in Dungarvan at the minute, Darragh Carroll, and he's going to be heading up to Limerick. He's going to get on a horse and he's going to grab his flame and he's going to ride the horse up to the hill of Unshook. It's a great little story. Another great story that's happening is the debate regarding Waterford's greatest sporting hero in conjunction with the wonderful company Flahavans. We've been combining with Ray Scott, Matt Keane, Michelle Ryan, Kieran O'Connor to compile the list of the 25 names. You can get all the names up on the WLR website. Already we've spoken and dealt and focused on Anya Wall, Alfie Hale, Beth Carton, Craig Breen, Dan Shanahan, Henry de Bromhead, Gillian Hayes, Jim Beglin, John Keane, John Leddingham, and in a minute I'm going to be talking to none other but John Mullane. So if you want to text in the word hero, H-E-R-O, and the name of the person that you nominate for the Waterford Greatest Sporting Hero, please do 083 333 975, or you can vote on the WLR-FM website, and the winner is going to be announced on this programme on Friday the 26th of June. Now, John Mullane, as many people know, he's Waterford's most decorated All-Star winner. He has been playing life and soul for De La Salle and involved in so many of the great games for Waterford over the years. John Mullane, good morning.
Morning, Damien.
How are you keeping?
That's not too bad.
Good.
Up here in Palmerstown, I'm Dublin, yeah.
Oh, very good. You're working away there like that. And yourself and the family, you got through the last few months okay. How did you find it, John? Tough, I suppose. Tough for everybody.
No, I quite enjoyed it, to tell you the truth.
Right.
I quite enjoyed it, kind of having that family time and, being able to spend more time with the family and do things that you probably miss out on when normality is there, So,
yeah.
You got to do things that you probably wouldn't have done before, and I suppose you appreciate value life an awful lot more when you go through a crisis like this,
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, do you think the people in Waterford did amazingly well? Everybody did well in the country, but and I know there was obviously the terrible thing about deaths, but generally people in Waterford were fabulous, weren't they?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose you have to only look at the
figures,
rates of the figures of the deaths and the cases. I think, unfortunately, I think we'd one death, or it was two, which is misunfortunate to that poor family. But in general, I think Waterford have done excellent to curb it. Yeah.
Are you missing the hurling, this football? I know you're into all different sports, watching it on the telly, but going to the matches, and I know the club championship fixture list has come out now in the last few days. There's a lot of people getting excited again now, aren't they?
Yeah, look, I suppose like any GA man, like any sports person, I suppose the one thing you miss doing is you miss going up to your local club field. I suppose, look, throughout the course of the year, that's where you spend most of your evenings. And I suppose once you have kids and you're involved in teams, I most certainly miss that. And I suppose that was probably the biggest challenge for an awful lot of sports people, is not being able to go up to your local sports field or your local club throughout the course of the summer. But look, thankfully, we'll be able to do it come the end of the month and hopefully into July and August. And touch wood, we won't get a second wave, and the matches will be able to kick on in August, September and October.
Getting on this list, John, with Flahavans, Waterford's greatest sporting heroes, top 25, the list is phenomenal, and it's the people that aren't on the list as well is phenomenal. But how do you feel about getting on this list?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I was a bit taken back. You got it in a nutshell. It's the people that are not on the list, and I suppose probably lucky that with these things that the here and now kind of overlook the past legends. And I think of legends like how I'm on the list ahead of someone like Philly Grimes. I mean, you hear the great stories of Philly Grimes. My father tell me the stories of Philly Grimes, and look, I don't envy the task of the people who had to pick the 25, but how someone like Philly Grimes is not on the 25 is
unbelievable. Yeah,
is unbelievable. Look, as you said, there's probably others I've left out as well. Probably fellas off the 1959 team probably should have been an awful lot more of that, and even stretching back to 48. I suppose. Look, if you're going to go down the route of having the greatest sports star of all time, I suppose, you can't go past those achievements. But as I said, the here and now players or the here and now sports people probably overlook players of the past of 60, 70 years ago,
Yeah, and it happens in all different walks of life, whether it's a list about movies, the movies you watch in the last, people that are alive, they maybe the same sort of a thing. So it happens in all different lists, but in this as well, as again, because it's Waterford's greatest sporting heroes, there's so many other sports involved and things like camogie and motorsport and all different things like boxing and athletics, show jumping, so basketball. So you're trying to get to get a top 25, you could go for a top 50 easily, and you'd really have a strong list as well.
Yeah, 100%. Look, no, don't get me wrong. I'm privileged and delighted to be honoured and to be mentioned in the same breath as some of the sports people that are on the list. And look, if you told me back in 2001 when I first put on a Waterford jersey that I'd be involved or my name would be linked to a debate with some of the greatest sports stars of all time that this county ever produced, I would have bitten the hand and the leg off it. So look, I'm very honoured, but a small bit taken back.
And that's exactly what I said to a few of the others. A lot of them, people we've spoken to, the modesty that's there, because that's what it takes to get to the top of your game in many different respects, John. That modesty and sort of honesty of effort that you say right, and that shines through with this list as well. As you say, you feel privileged and honoured. How your career has been, don't you?
Most certainly, because I suppose for me, starting off, as I said, if you would have told me back before I broke onto the Waterford team, if you would have told probably many people within the county, people wouldn't have even heard of myself, and to fast forward the clock, I suppose, 15 years later, I suppose I finished up in 2012, and I suppose I won the first Munster title in 2002. But if you told me back in 2002 that, albeit we didn't reach the Holy Grail, I didn't win the Holy Grail, but if you told me back in 2002 after winning the first Munster title that, I'd push on and win 6 Munster championships between both club and county, I would have taken the arm, as I said, I would have taken the arm and the leg off you. And I suppose for me, starting off, it was just about, I'm wicked passionate about my club, wicked passionate about Deise, and it was all about just kind of putting Deise on the map, more so nationally than anything else. And I'd like to think that I've contributed in doing that. And I think, there's other lads have been there, Kevin and Brian the Bull, Phelan, Derek has done it, Stevie Brenner. And now, look, it's fantastic that Beth is now on the list, and she's a fabulous ambassador for Deise as well. And I think the kick for me and the drive for me was to get the Deise name out there nationally. And I think we've done a good job in doing that the last 10, 15 years,
John, beautifully said, really, really nice said. Listen, to you and your family and everybody in the club, take care and mind yourself, and mind yourself on the road, won't you?
No bother, Damien. Thank you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. I'm going to be talking to Shane O'Sullivan in a minute. Good morning, Shane.
Morning, Damien.
How's it going?
Good.
What's the traffic like out there? Heavy enough. It's building up a little bit. Tony texted me in from Ballynaneen and regarding the boxing. Watched all the boxing, all the greats. Think going back to the days of Jack Johnson, Joe Lewis, all the greats. Ruled by the mafia. As I said, it would turn in his grave. True boxing fans want crowds involved in boxing. Lots of lovely texts coming in about John Mullane. Know John a long time. Went to school in Deise with my son Brian. Still have the first Holy Communion photo from Tony Power in Ferrybank. Other people saying, I'm proud John is from Waterford. Michael Maloney says, a lovely man. Lovely message in from Suzanne, because her son Alan turned 30 and he and his fiancée Anya had to cancel their wedding. John took the time out to make a video message for Alan. Regarding that loud bang, it was probably a container being moved at the port of Waterford. Sometimes you can hear the noise from here in Faith Leg. That seems like the best text we've had on so far regarding that. Shane O'Sullivan, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
How are you?
Good.
Good. You've been involved in hurling and all different sports, hurling in particular, over the many, many years. And you're missing it. We're all missing it. Missing all the sports, yeah. Involved with Ballygunner. One of the things you've been doing over the last few years is developing, I suppose, a strand of, a business strand to try and inspire excellence. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's a long story, but we'll keep it to the point today, Damien. So it all started back when I was 14 years of age with Liam Griffin in the Bandon Hotel in Wexford. And actually, Frank O'Callaghan was a teacher in De La Salle College and Derek McGrath at the time. And they brought us down to listen to Liam talk about high performance or talk about the Wexford team that won the All-Ireland in 1996. And we were all expecting him to speak about the technical skills of how that great Wexford team were so skillful and that they were so physically fit. They were able to score from every angle and they were great cornerbacks, fullbacks, Gerard Cush, etc. But he proceeded to talk for a full hour on the power of the mind and how the differentiator between that Wexford team and previous teams was that their ability to handle pressure in big matches. So they'd come from a place where they'd never won a championship match in the Leinster Championship in the old knockout phases to being the best in the country. And he spoke about all the aspects of the psychological development. And he said that at the time, the most important thing that they did was focus on their mental strength and their mindset. So he spoke about visualisation, how some of the players would go into a room when others were training out on the pitch and they just visualised themselves coming on in Croke Park in front of 60, 70,000 people and scoring goals. And he spoke about walking around in the parade before matches and how the team could actually work with their emotional arousal and get to the stage where they could be at peak performance. So things like breathing techniques, looking up at the crowd and seeing them as bones and seeing through them to the back of the stand. Small things like chewing gum and having a joke a half an hour before matches. So that started the process and that led me to where I am today with working with CEOs and companies throughout the world. And obviously, luckily enough, at home in the last 3 months or 6 months, I've found that a lot of Waterford people are appreciating this more than ever, which is a great place to be in.
I've wanted to have you in the studio since I started this programme a year and a half ago, and I think now more than ever it's important to have you in. You gave a talk recently to business people. Tell me about that talk.
Okay, one Waterford Chamber talk. Well, basically they asked me to come in and talk about resilience and in this present environment what's important and how people can navigate uncertainty to be their best, personally and professionally. So that was the overall theme of the talk. And we touched on a number of things. Obviously, the webinar was for an hour. But if you take some of the key insights from it, one of the key things we spoke about was the different zones of resilience. So if you think about it, before COVID-19 happened and in the past, a lot of us were living in a comfort zone. So we get up in the morning, we get our breakfast, we go to work or we go to college, we have our lunch, we go back to work, we come home, we have our dinner, we watch telly and we go to bed. Every day, same thing over and over again. But what COVID-19 has done is actually taken us out of that comfort zone and pushed us into a stretch zone. And a stretch zone is a place where it's really, really good for our growth and development because we're challenging ourselves to a place that we haven't been before. And in that, we're realising our full potential. But unfortunately, it was such a pandemic that it put a lot of us into our panic zone, which is outside our stretch zone. So we spoke about how we can actually get into that stretch zone and maybe sometimes to have that bit of comfort so we can be at our best and realise our full potential. So we spoke about the 5 key elements of resilience, and it's widening the window of that stretch zone. And it's really interesting research from Georgetown University in the USA. And it's basically the 5 key components of widening our ability to be in that stretch zone. And it's the fundamental things of like self-awareness, social connection, nutrition, exercise and sleep. And of all the research and of everybody trying to get that extra 10% in performance and in life, those are the scientifically proven principles that allow everybody to thrive personally and professionally.
And that mention of science is very important because you get a lot of people that do talks and do inspirational videos and all sorts of Instagram stuff, and it sounds well-meaning and there can be quotes, and I know you put up some very good quotes, but it has to be backed up by science. And for me in particular, I'd read a lot of books about the different psychological aspects you're talking about. And if you see somebody basing their message on scientific evaluation, you certainly feel an awful lot more confident in then putting that message forward, either for yourself or for a group you're coaching.
100%. It's credibility is where it comes from.
Credibility.
And the depth of science that's out there at the moment is absolutely remarkable in relation to many, many different topics. So if you were actually to read the latest research on heart rate coherence and how we're sitting maybe 2-3 metres away from each other at this moment, but if I think compassionately about you, there's an energy field that comes out of my body and actually affects the way that you feel. And when I was thinking of this, I was looking and saying, what? Where did this come out of? But I looked at the science and Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he has done. And basically what he has done is put people within a room, 300 or 400 people, took 10 people, put them up the front, put earphones on them like we have today, so they couldn't see or hear anything. And the 300 people, he put obviously heart rate monitors to test their heart rate variability and coherence. The 300 people at the back of the room, he instructed them to send compassion and love and energy to those people at the front of the room. And directly at the time that he instructed the people at the back of the room to direct that energy to the front, their heart rate coherence changed. And it became more fluid from the feelings and compassion of others. So that's the latest science. And I'm like you, I would have looked at that and said, how is that possible?
Yeah.
But there's so much scientific evidence out there now in relation to many, many principles that it actually is possible. And when we can break free from maybe the chains of our own limitations and our own mindsets, we really realise that we have so much potential to be our best.
Our brains are still works in progress as society develops and as our ability to measure the different things that come from our brains. Like in 100 years' time, we won't be here, but those that will be here will be so far more advanced in understanding. It's an exciting field, isn't it?
100%. It's the, if you take exercise, for example, the field of exercise scientifically in the last 100 years expanded exponentially. So 100 years ago, we kind of had an idea that exercise was good, but we did not know the benefits of it. Whereas today, if you talk to somebody and you ask them about exercise, is exercise positive? 100%. Does it have a positive impact on your well-being? 100%. Does it have a positive impact on your performance in work if you're fit and healthy? 100%. So we know that now. But with the psychological element in components like meditation and mindfulness, we are now at the stage whereby exercise 100 years ago was at. So we're only starting to progress into this area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you take a branch of my clients across the world, the highest performers will all be focusing on mindfulness, meditation. How can they live more in the present, etc., etc.
So the idea of banging a hurley and breaking a hurley against the table and smashing up a dressing room and shouting at lads and roaring at them to get out the field, lads! Come on, lads! That's gone.
Not necessarily. And it's interesting because one of the unique things about coaching is that everyone is different. And what works for Damien Tiernan might not work for me as Shane O'Sullivan. So some people can respond. So if you take a scale of 1 to 10, an emotional arousal for performance, whether you're going in to do a presentation or whether you're performing on a big stage in a big match, every individual has a level on that scale that suits them to be their best. So for example, 0 would be deep sleep. And 10 would be, like you talked about, breaking hurleys, intense excitement, etc., anger maybe, and a really high volatile octane environment.
Not Davy Fitz.
Yes, Davy. Davy would have reserved himself over the years, I'm sure, but Davy can go into that space, like us all.
Yeah.
But some people respond to that. So I've been in dressing rooms in the past, and some of the guests actually you would have had on this week, where there would be that kind of environment with some players, and they would be carrying on like that, and they would go out and have a brilliant game. But then there would be a same environment, same match, and a player would be sitting in the corner, breathing and having, just getting his emotions in check and being at a level 2 or 3 or 4, and that player would also go out and have a brilliant game.
Yeah, you're right. There is a variety, and like John Mullane will talk about how he used to hit the hurley off his legs, and that would be his way of getting himself going and make it red. And Tom Feeney would talk about different ways of doing it. You talk about different ways of doing it. Is it a wonder? You say everybody's different. Is it a case then that maybe some people are at different levels of understanding of themselves that might make them different like that? Or are we all the same, to coin the Monty Python movie phrase?
Great question. I think as our self-awareness grows, we understand how we can get into these zones of optimal functioning easier. So the first element of coaching is actually building a better awareness about ourselves. So when we're aware of what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what's our deepest values, what connects to the spirit and the heart that we have, what allows us to perform at our best, then we move into a growth phase where we can actually set targets and goals around what we can do to grow. And the third element, and this is science again, it's micro-learning, the third element then is we'll set those goals and targets, we apply them, and then we reflect on them. So without that self-awareness, we cannot move into our best self or identify how we can fulfill our absolute potential in whatever that is for each individual.
One of the reasons I wanted to get you in was to talk, just to touch on, as you say, different aspects of it, business, and then coming back to sport, people will be looking at this. What we might do over the next while, talk about it afterwards, is maybe developing these strands, maybe doing a bit more on it, because you've touched on, you're opening up so much interesting debating topics there. And thank you very much.
Pleasure, Damien.
Thanks, Shane. It's great to talk to you again.
Good day.
And you're back training a bit. You're looking fairly fit anyway. You've been keeping it going.
We've been trying, We've obviously it's great to get fixtures and running out for people in general, for the whole of the county, especially just for the older generation, maybe to watch it and to talk and have a bit of communication and social connection again. So,
and the club is just going to be so important. I was just looking at some of the regradings of players from senior down to junior. There'll be some junior matches now in hurling and football. There'll be all stars playing on different teams. It'll be unreal, It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Brilliant. And sport is something that was a loss for everybody, I think, in the whole midst of this environment, and it's great to have parts of it back, and I think it'll allow us to flourish and grow through it.
Some lovely texts coming in for you there. I'll read them out afterwards.
Pleasure,
Shane, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. God bless.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Now, keep your texts and comments coming in. A number of lovely texts there about what Shane had to say, and fair play to him, a lovely chap, great hurler, great on the field and off the field, and other people saying his inspirational talks are helping. So we might get Shane on again. We'll talk about that again. In a minute, I'm going to be hearing about Mary O'Neill talking to Nicholas Carroll from Tramore. Firstly, a few texts. That response from the chap in Faith Leg about the bang possibly being a container in the port. I highly doubt that a container could make such a bang. It was definitely similar to a sonic boom. That says this texter. And Joe says, there's simply not enough bins along the Copper Coast. I live in Bunman. I've counted only 10 bins have been returned, where 26 have been removed. Where are the missing 16 bins? We want them all returned, in capital letters. Our public bin collection along the Copper Coast back to the service that was supplied last summer. So let us know what you think about that. Another texter regarding walking along the beach, and a lot of litter out there as well. So that's the same sort of thing. Now, mental health, suicide awareness, very, very important. We are involved here in WR with the Suicide or Survive SOS that takes place every year in Lemmy Bryan to promote that, and unfortunately didn't take place this year. So we're doing a 20k challenge for different people between last Monday and June 21st. You can donate on WLRFM.com, nominate 3 friends to do the same, and the hashtag is Cycle for SOS. So in collaboration with this, Mary O'Neill recently spoke to a number of people in Waterford who have lost loved ones to suicide. Our final interview today is with Nicholas Carroll from Tramore, and it's a lovely interview. And again, some people might find this a little bit upsetting, but it's a very, very important issue to talk about, and it's a very important issue to raise awareness about. So this is Mary O'Neill talking to Nicholas Carroll.
Now, we hear a lot about men's health, which is great that there's open conversations these days. And, men in particular, I suppose, are encouraged to speak and to talk to their friends and family and to access services. You lost a friend to suicide, Nicholas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I suppose I kind of would have lost 2 friends really, but one of my friends would have been a best friend of mine. I'm an only child as well, so I would have counted him as a brother to me as well. So of course, being an only child, you could be isolated as well. But look, I suppose the shock, I found the day I found out I was on the back road at Tramore, and I avoided driving that back road to Tramore for a couple of months afterwards because I knew the spot where it was. But yeah, I suppose it's kind of soul destroying, I suppose, as well, to think that someone that I thought was so healthy physique wise and looks wise, he had the looks, he had the charm, he had the charisma, was just a shadow of what I thought it was, and if the sun shines down on us, we can see our own shadows, but something like mental health, you can't, whatever way the sun shines, you can't see the shadow. I suppose it took me back, and I was really taken back by it and shocked, obviously because we lost him, he won't be around no more, but the reason why we lost him, I think, was a bigger thing, because I didn't think that was ever an issue, I suppose, I think that's the real shock, you have the emotional shock of losing the loved one, but then unless you're affected by it, it's very hard to understand like I've never been affected by it before in my life, unfortunately, until last year. You think about it, that's terrible, that's sad, I suppose, but it's actually until it hits you, it's undescribable, really, and it's very hard. I think it's very hard to speak to people. But I suppose by doing things like this, Mary, and doing charities and talking about it as well, I'd like to give people some sort of an insight. Hopefully they'll never experience it, but just to give them, I suppose, an understanding and I suppose an encouragement and motivation to talk to your friends and talk to your family members as well, you know.
So your friend who you lost never spoke to you or any other close friends about struggling with mental health issues. You simply didn't know?
No, he would have spoken to people about it over the years. But, you know, I suppose we never thought it would get to a stage like that. But for me, the more I think about it now, you know, and at the time, it's only, I suppose, everyone grieves differently. And I suppose, looking back on the year there, I suppose, we used to go for coffees the whole time. And he was big into the gym as well, I suppose, and big into sport. We played sport together for years. We worked out together for years. So I suppose when I look back on it then and going for these, we used to go for coffee, but it was never one coffee. It was always two coffees at the one time, because you used to be sitting there the whole time, people watching, just talking. And I don't even know what we're talking about. We talk about stuff at the start, all right, but then the conversation just goes on and we're sitting there having two coffees. You know, your hands be shaking after having two coffees. But I suppose the more I look back on it now, that like he really enjoyed that time. That was time where I suppose he was at his most calmest and at ease, was when you're sitting down in a coffee shop. We used to go to all the different coffee shops in Waterford to test out all the different types of coffee, you know, and see which one was the best. And we had our favourites, and some had better views, like, you know, in Tramore you have the view at the prom, where others you'd have, I suppose, out in Tesco Arkeen there, you'd have the view around that area and seeing different people. But it's crazy, I suppose, now I'm going back on and thinking that those were the times that he really appreciated, and he was talking, even though we weren't talking about anything, we were just talking, you know. It could have been the weather, it could have been the soccer on the weekend, it could have been a night out, it could be anything. It could have been he cut the grass too short. It could have been literally anything. And it's only when I'm reflecting on it now, I suppose, you realise that
you must really miss him, and not just you, but his family and the wider community must really miss him. Sounds like he was a fun, great person, and somebody that you really loved.
He was a brother that I didn't have, you know, as I'm an only child. And I'm grateful for that too, you know. I'm grateful to be an only child as well. But I suppose, from my own point of view, I don't know what it's like having a brother or sister. So when you are an only child, I suppose some of your best friends are your brothers and sisters as well, not only just a best friend, you know. So he would have been like a best friend and a brother to me, in terms of I would have learned how to cook, which is funny, like you think you learn off your parent, but he would have taught me how to cook healthy and stuff like that. He would have told me how to dress up, I suppose, as well, and just little things like that, you know. That again, it's only when you reflect on it, and when you can reflect on it too, that you realise how much of a figure someone like that was to you.
And we are encouraging people to cycle 20 kilometres from their own home after the 8th of June, when the restrictions are lifted, to raise awareness for the charity Suicide or Survive. And, you know, you've spoken a lot here, Nicholas, about the importance of talking and reaching out and accessing services, but I suppose we really want to emphasise that. And what would you say to anybody who might be struggling with their own mental health in terms of how important it is to reach out and know that there is help there?
Yeah, I suppose, like, if you look at my own situation, I would have lost my friend and another friend in the past 12 months, and I also lost my father in January. 3 deaths, I suppose, in the past 12 months. And even to come on here today, Mary, and talk to you, I was nervous last night, but when I woke up this morning, I just felt the need and the urge to try and speak for a lot of other people and encourage other people, I suppose. I think for men, really, I think it's to leave your emotions come in terms of being able to cry. You know, I don't think I cry only when it's death. Like, I wouldn't cry watching the TV or stuff like that. Like, you know, I think you need to leave, like, your natural emotions come into you. These are things that take time, like, you know, like, why does someone do it and stuff like that. And then the other thing then, and like, we have a great community in Tramore as well, and I suppose it's the risk for survivors that this is something that, like, if you only feel it once in your lifetime, it might affect you for a long time. So it's okay to talk, and like, we have a good group in Tramore, as I said, and we always say, lads, talk to each other, lads, you know. And even after the both passings, we had 2 social events, one in Tramore and we had one in town as well. And the crowds we gathered that day, like, it showed a mark of respect for the 2 guys that passed away, but everyone was in the one area and we were all talking like that. And similar to the cycling event now, you know, when people are going to do the 20k cycle now, do your cycle, take your pictures, ring up people afterwards, talk about how you get on to cycle. Don't judge yourself against other people. Just allow yourself to have fun and take every day as it comes.
Okay.
And I suppose the last point I really want to focus on would be exercise. It's only been since lockdown, and that's why doing this 20k cycle is a great idea. I actually went on a cycle myself, Mary, last weekend around Tramore, but my God, there was hills there. Trore's a hilly place. There was hills there, and halfway through it, I was like, I just give up and go home. I suppose I was like, no, we'll go out and do it. And when I came back then, I was talking to Mum, I suppose. I was like, I went out to Newtown, I was down to Gilmean, I was down to the beach, and like just the views and looking out seas, you feel really refreshed after it, like, you know, and so that's why something like this 20k cycle would be great for people to get involved in and do as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I appreciate it so much. Thanks very much, Nicholas.
Now, tough interview again. Samaritans in Waterford, 872 114 051 872 114, and you can contact Samaritans, go online or Pieta House. That was Mary O'Neill talking to Nicholas Carroll. Thanks very much to everybody taking part in those interviews and to all the families involved, and thanks very much, Mary, for putting them together. On another matter, a positive matter, I got a message there from a person this morning. She has booked her hair appointment for the first Monday in June. It's just amazing. So let us know. Have you got a hair appointment booked already? 083 333 975. Now we've opened up a can of worms. Are there worms in your hair? I'm a list of bookings with my hairdresser, but there's, wait for it, 170 people ahead of me, says Eileen. Damien, my sister heard the boom last night in Butlerstown. She thought the oil tank had blown up outside. That's from Sinead. Damien, regarding rubbish, there needs to be raw rubbish bins in Lismore, and everybody should clean up their dog poo. Now, Dara Carroll, 25 years of age. He set sail from the coast of Norway in November. He's on course to complete an epic solo journey that's brought him around Scotland, down to Dublin, and now he is at Dungarvan. He left Tromoya, an island off Norway's southeast coast, on November the 15th, and he's going to tell us about that. He's currently waiting to go up to Limerick, where he's going to bring the flame of, I'll tell you now in a second, to the centre of Ireland. Dara, good morning. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Not too bad. Just pulled into Dungarvan there, just weathering out a bit of weather, strong northerly breezes. Gonna weather that out for 2 days and back on the sea then Sunday.
How is the boat? How is your Ran, R-A-N?
Ran is doing well now. She needs a bit of attention. I've been doing minor repairs just along the way. In wooden boats you have cogging. So cogging goes in between the boards, and that's a mix of tar and hemp. I've been doing kind of patch repair, because to do a full job on it takes, like, you'd need it out of the water for a good 2 weeks. At the moment, I'm just making it safe, so I can get it around the West Coast, where I'll be doing a much bigger job on it. But now at the moment, it's safe. The sails are working. There's no engine, unfortunately. So the diesel engine, I had a mechanic look at it. And it's looking like a bit of a rebuild, because it's 1960 Mercedes. So getting parts and everything is not so easy.
Safety, as you say, it's quite important, isn't it? Especially when you're on the water.
Yeah, but it wasn't too long ago that nearly every boat didn't have an engine, So it wasn't only about 100 years ago that most boats, nearly all boats, were used by sail. So
when I was growing up,
too long ago.
When I was growing up, one of my favourite books was The Brendan Voyage, and I know there was a movie made out, or a documentary made out of it as well, about the trip, I suppose, from Ireland over to Newfoundland, and how they recreated that in the late 70s. Tell me, and just remind our listeners about what are you actually doing?
So on the 15th of November, I set out on a journey from Norway back to Ireland on a traditional wooden Colin Archer. Now, the journey was a bit of a spiritual journey for me that involved the fire, going from one ceremonial place in Norway to a very old ceremonial place in Ireland. Now, during that journey, I had planned on being back for Christmas, So, kind of getting across the North Sea and everything before the winter really kicked off. But, of course, there was going to be setbacks along the way, and then kind of came into Scotland, big storm in Scotland, ended up having to beach the boat in Scotland on a high tide. So when you beach a boat on a high tide, it's not so easy to get the boat back out. So ended up spending 2 months on a beach in Scotland picking periwinkles for cash. And
as you do, yeah.
Then it was pretty good. Like, the guys are coming down in the vans. I was offloading bags and bags of periwinkles because I had nothing else to really do, because the boat was just waiting for the tide to come in,
Yeah.
And then from there, it was no engine, so that changed my whole dynamics of sailing, my whole intuitive to the weather and tides, and it really took me in a whole different dimension of sailing, and really you start to acknowledge the whole aspects of all the elements. Where with an engine, you can kind of skip a lot of it. Like, when the tide starts to change, you can stick on the engine, or when the wind starts to go down, you can stick on the engine. Without that, it just becomes a whole different realm of travelling.
I suppose it develops an exoteric sort of experience that you're at one with nature. Without getting too philosophical, you're completely at the elements' behest, aren't you?
Yeah, with sacred timing of space, where you're meant to meet certain people along the way, that timing is very at the hands of nature. And I think that flow is very important for the rest of my journey, for the kind of ease of it, because that's where kind of magic really comes into things, where you meet certain people at certain times and certain spaces when you're working or when you're traveling in these manners. That sort of meeting people at the right space and the right time, and everything seems to work a lot easier for some reason than if you were to have an engine. I don't know why. If we were to have an engine, you just wouldn't meet the same people, or the timing would always be different. So for me, it's been harder but easier in a very strange way.
Yeah, no, that makes
without
sense.
An engine, because of the contacts and the people I've met without an engine.
And that idea of a journey, and that ties into the next question about the idea of you getting the inspiration for the journey from the fire that you lit in the woods on the island of Tromoya, a site connected with the Vikings. So you're basically bringing this flame from Norway to the hill of Hillock, is it?
To the hill of Hillock, yes. So I was meditating quite a lot around a hoof. Now, a hoof is an ancient ceremonial site, pre-Christian to the old Norse mythology. And around this hoof, I had a vision of bringing the vibration of a highly abundant forest, where this forest flourished very well as a highly balanced ecosystem, to a place where our forestry has been massacred compared to the standard of forestry that would be in Norway. We've overgrazed, we've chopped down like 90% of what was their forestry. So for bringing a spirit of a habitat that is flourishing to a place that has been massacred of its natural growth. So that vision came to me, that I would have to transport this ancient flame or ancient spirit from one place of abundance to a place of neglect, to enhance the level of fertility and growth in the land.
It's very emotional, it's very spiritual, that journey you're doing. Were you always like this? Did you have a moment of revelation as a young lad growing up, Dara? Or what were you like as a young lad? Were you out and about kicking football as normal, or what were you doing?
I've always been quite adventurous. So from the age of 18, I've been on the road, really. So I've kind of ingested a lot of different cultures. I've always was quite religious, say, as in the younger times, as in within the Catholic Church. And then from there, my mind kind of opened as I went to Canada and started getting into more kind of shamanistic views of living, views of life, and then kind of just ingesting different cultures, different heritages in so many different countries have gave me kind of an overall picture of what like visionary manifesting and meditation and kind of going inwards, going like your internal is just as important as your external, and focusing on the balance and solitude and silence of the internal can then project your external environment, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, because I've studied a little bit about this, and what it means is that people will ask about relationships that you have, but those relationships you have with other people come in the context mainly as a follow-on from your relationship with the earth. So that relationship that you're having with the earth and with the land and with the water is your primary source of, I suppose, inspiration. How does it affect relationships though? Like, what happens about girlfriends or boyfriends or friends or anything like that? Are you happy in your own skin?
Yeah, it's always great to meet people that, because you would be alone for quite a long time. So it's always great to meet friends. And I always stay in good contact with friends. I have no girlfriend at the moment, but you never know.
Do you have any deodorant? This is the main thing now on the board.
Well, I might need a scrub down,
A good wash. You could do with a good wash, as somebody would say.
A good wash under the ears and under the pits,
But on a serious note, can you see yourself settling down? Because I was looking at some of the stuff you've done. You're happy in solitude rather than loneliness.
Yeah, but I do love community space. I do love being part of a community and sharing.
Yeah.
My skills of cooking, because cooking for people is one of the biggest things that I really enjoy. Cooking for groups of people and letting them enjoy really nice food. So I love service for people. I love being in service around people. So that is also great. But I like the balance of kind of journeying by myself, but then coming back to those spaces with a different headspace, creating a great environment for people. So I do enjoy, people's company.
Yeah, the communal experience. Yeah, as you say, a cooking.
Yeah.
How are you paying for it, Dara? How's it How are you getting a few bob?
So before I left, I saved up quite a bit, and at the moment, I'm just waiting on tax back to come back from Norway. I've been budgeting very tightly though. I don't pay for diesel. I do a lot of dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is there's shopping centres that throw out a disgraceful amount of food, really good food. So sometimes I would either ask them, is it possible that I could have a look through the bin? A lot of smaller private shops have no problem with it. I would go around and fill up full backpacks of really good food, and that could do me for 2 to 3 weeks. One good bin. An example, I was up in Norway, and I went to the back of, I think it was a coop, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I was looking at full trolleys full of bread that went off that day. Now, some of those breads I put on the boat and didn't open for 2 weeks. And I opened them 2 weeks later after they were in the bin, and they were still okay. No mold, no nothing. The amount, I had even boxes and boxes of Cadbury's bars, there's bars, boxes of them. It was crazy. Some food just doesn't go off. Bacon doesn't really go off. It's salted, it's cured, and there's a lot of meat. It's crazy what we're throwing out into the bin, especially times during pandemic. And I'm going through a bin going, right, something is really wrong. Not only we're growing food, then wrapping it in plastic, and then putting it back in the ground. We're not even opening the packet and separating the organic from the plastic.
It's amazing. You're right. And if ever there's World War III, I'm with you. I'm on that boat because you're going to keep me alive. Your sense of survival and spirit of adventure is phenomenal. What are you going to do next?
So plan next is to get to Hillock. So we'll be going around to Limerick and hopefully getting as far up the Shannon with the fire as we possibly can. I have a horse in Limerick and we're going to do a drive for mental health. We're just working on the...
You have a horse in Limerick. How have you got a horse in Limerick? Don't we all?
So, see, the reason why I kind of got the boat as well, I was working on a concept around traditional Irish travelling. So, as in travelling in a horse with a boat top travelling wagon, like a gypsy wagon.
Okay.
So I was working on a food concept where I was going to create an open fire kitchen inside of a wagon and also have all the equipment to set up an open fire kitchen outdoors, outside the wagon, as in a travelling family would do.
Right.
And my plan was to travel from farm to farm around Ireland, collecting a lot of wild ingredients and storing them in the wagon and celebrating farmers' harvests. So go outside a farm, cook dishes of their harvest and celebrate local Irish food through a very traditional means of a horse and a wagon. Okay.
I see a TV series properly in this, maybe. You wouldn't know.
Yeah, you never know. So I went to Norway to save for that.
Right.
And then I got enrolled in the Norwegian travelling culture. So I didn't know Norway had travellers. They do, and they're descendants from big Viking families who descended through society and eventually ended up as travellers who moved from harbour to harbour, fixing boats, fixing sails, and kind of doing the similar thing as Irish travellers, but the Norwegian ones travelled on by boat.
Listen, Dara, thanks so much. Continued success and mind yourself, and hope the horse, somebody's looking after the horse, I'm sure, are they? They have to.
Yeah, Mr. Paddy Hanley. He's one of the best horse drivers in Ireland.
Good man, great. Dara, take care and thank you so much for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for calling.
Now, thanks, Dara, and the best of luck to him and his horse. We'll talk to you soon, folks. Andy is up next. Thanks for all your texts and comments. Thank you very much, Julie, for producing. Fabulous Friday is on tomorrow.